Number 10. The Devil Made Me Do It. In 1981, 19-year-old Arne Cheyenne Johnson sparked controversy far and wide for a crime he wasn't behind, or so we think. While arguing with Alan Bono over Johnson's girlfriend, Arne stabbed Bono, resulting in the man's death. When police arrived, Arne claimed that the devil made him do it. When the words "the devil made me do it" came from his mouth, it sent the world into controversy. Apparently, Arne was possessed by a demon that had not been vanquished by the Warrens at all. Ed and Lorraine had worked with his family a year prior when Arne's girlfriend's brother David was possessed by not one, not two, but 43 demons. In order to save him, Arne commanded the demons to enter him instead, so when his dark deed finally occurred, Ed and Lorraine flew to his defense. The Warrens stated that at the time of the exorcism, and I quote, "Johnson leapt up and cried to the demon, 'Come into me, I'll fight you, come into me.' But from that time on, he was possessed." The Paranormal Society was split in half, but Johnson's team was committed. The court had defended acts of God in the past, like a lightning strike to a tree hits a car, you know what I mean? And now it was time to defend accounts of the devil. But despite what you believe, it wasn't enough, and Johnson received a maximum sentence but was released after good behavior just 4 years later. But still, the fact that these demons were never truly vanquished left the Warrens terrified that this might be the case elsewhere. Number 9. The Smurl Haunting. Jack and Janet Smurl sound like they should be like the leading couple of a comedy featuring Jennifer Aniston and Jason Sudeikis. But of course, wrong list. The plight of the couple attracted the attention of Ed and Lorraine Warren after a series of dark and ominous events struck, of course. In the 1970s, the family started experiencing shocking technical mishaps like their TV bursting into flames and toilets flushing by themselves. I know, do ghosts poop? Apparently. At first, they didn't think anything of it, but then the knocking started, in a peculiar pattern of 3 followed by terrible sudden odors, making the Smurls feel ill. The strange noises and smells were swiftly followed by sightings and thus entered the Warrens. The Warrens discovered a presence of 3 separate demons, and despite 3 exorcisms, the family reported the return of the demons until finally they let go 15 years later. Number 8. The Haunting in Connecticut. The mortuary turned home for the Snedeker family in Southington, Connecticut definitely created the perfect breeding grounds for a scary story, one that left even the Warrens uneasy in their skin. First off, moving into a mortuary? No thank you. In the 1980s, the Warrens took on the case of Carmen and Al Snedeker, who were being tormented by a series of restless spirits and demons. So in this case, it's not just one, but many that they feared. The family reported the smell of rotted flesh lingering in the house because, I don't know, it was a mortuary, and that the taps would turn red out of nowhere. The eldest son was plagued by visions of ghosts, and both Carmen and Al reported being sodomized by the ghosts. It's a very specific activity. Which led to the Warrens making the discovery that whoever the morticians were, their activities were not always professional, if you get my drift. I don't know what's worse, the demons themselves or like the people who used to live there. Ugh, can't handle that. This was one of their most confusing cases and remains under scrutiny to this day, but the Warrens knew whatever it was had to be exorcised. But the question is, was it really, or is it just hiding out until someone else comes along? Number 7. The Enfield Haunting. I don't know what it is with the 70s, man. It just seems like so much weird stuff happened. We had serial killers. It's nuts. But it just seems like it's one of the strangest times in history, what with violent killers and violent hauntings. The Enfield Haunting took place in Brimstown, England, and remains one of the more boggling cases the Warrens worked on. Peggy Hodgson and her family claimed to have seen furniture and toys being thrown and moved by unknown forces in their homes. They even claimed that violent voices were heard and that their children were levitating in the air. They caught the photo of the girls levitating when the investigators set up a wired control camera into the room, which periodically caught images throughout the night. Whatever it was, the Warrens knew there was a demonic entity within the house and immediately set to work. Number 6. The Perrin family case. The Perrin family lived in the old Arnold estate, which inspired the scariest film I have ever seen personally, because if you've watched me on Central Dark, you know how low my tolerance is. But anyway, it's still awful. Yeah, you know it, you've heard of it. 8 generations of families lived and died in the old house, and apparently apparently never wanted to leave, or never could. When the Perron family moved in the 1970s, the advice they got was to leave the lights on always. Why didn't you leave then? I don't know. I don't know how that didn't send them running for the hills. The house had been rife with tragedy, but one of the 3 people who took their own lives was an alleged Satanist whose activity was responsible for the possession of the house. Her name was Bathsheba Sherman, who became a demon that Lorraine will never forget. The demon would physically attack the daughters of the Perron family, with one reportedly seeing a floating head screaming and retching at her. Ugh, I almost didn't say her name, but I did, so we'll see what happens to me now. Number 5. The Shadow Doll. The Shadow Doll is literally the doll of your nightmares. The Shadow Doll comes from unknown origins but was kept in the Warrens Museum for safekeeping. But what we do know was that it was used for satanic rituals, and that the thing is doused in black magic and contains human and animal bones. Whatever possesses this thing had the Warrens take it into their possession to ensure that it caused harm to no one else. Legend has it that if you take a picture of the doll, it will possess your nightmares. But it won't just be any nightmare. It will be the most terrifying you've ever experienced, and some have even suffered heart attacks from them. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't they just burn the thing? Well, what's more dangerous? A demon you can see right in front of you, or one free to wander wherever it chooses? Honestly, I take the spider approach with this. If you see the spider, you know where the spider is, you're good. As soon as the spider disappears, burn your house down. Number 4. Valak. This one is a little controversial because was it just made up for the films? We don't know. Valak is a real demon mentioned in the Lesser Key of Solomon that was introduced into the Conjuring series of films. Though her direct involvement with Lorraine and Ed is under debate, Lorraine's belief in the demon was very strong. Valak is referred to as the Great President of Hell, and usually chooses to appear as a small winged, two-headed creature thing resembling a child. Valak is said to command 30 legions of demons, and in the film became the leading arch nemesis of the Warrens. We'll mention Borley Church in a second, but Valak was portrayed as a nun. But there is some speculation that says that they may have actually encountered him throughout some of their worst cases. Lorraine often said that she encountered a black, shadowy vision of a dark entity whenever she wasn't working on a case, and believed that she was being followed by something she couldn't explain. Want to know more? Stay tuned until the end of the video and make sure to like and subscribe while we're here. Number 3. Borley Church relates to Valak. We'll talk about this in a second. The grim history of Borley Church is the perfect setting for a horror film. The land upon which it is built used to be the home to a 14th century monastery, where a monk fell in love with a nun at a nearby convent, which led to the monk being hanged, and the nun was bricked up alive within the walls of her convent, which sounds pretty friggin' extreme if you ask me. It sounds like evil resided there long before Ed and Lorraine made the trek out to sort out whatever demon lay between its walls. Whoever did that to those 2 poor people, ooh, that's awful. This case inspired the famous nun apparition, as I mentioned, as the youngest daughter of the family who settled there reported seeing her figure. She was also pushed and slapped hard enough to leave welts behind, and that was just in the 1800s. When Ed and Lorraine visited, they obtained photo evidence of the hauntings. Ed captured the image of a monk leafing through one of the books at the altar, and Lorraine experienced a black entity rush past her. Valak. She remembered feeling an overwhelming sense of evil. A picture revealed later showed that the shadow of a nun was rushing past her, so that's where the image came from. So was it Valak? We don't know. Number 2. The Annabelle doll. You knew. Probably the most famous of the hauntings conquered by the Warrens was the Annabelle doll. It would almost be a crime not to mention it. Dolls are already eerie with their black, piercing, beady eyes that look like there's nothing there. But in this case, the most terrifying part was the thing behind it. The case dates back to the 1970s when a Raggedy Ann doll was innocently purchased from an antique store for her daughter. Soon the doll began raising alarm when it would change positions in the house, boggling its owners. But when the notes started showing up saying "help me" and "help Lou," then they came home to find it covered in blood and they decided then that they needed to call a professional. The first medium they called in said it was just the spirit of a girl who passed away, but then the owner, Angie's boyfriend, was attacked. Enter the Warrens. They knew the doll was in fact a demon based on the marks of the beast and other encounters. They removed the doll and took it home, vowing not to take the highway, concerned that whatever was within the doll might cause an accident. Indeed, their brakes stalled or failed several times on their way home, putting their life in jeopardy several times. It wasn't until Ed doused the doll in holy water that the problem desisted. The couple was so concerned about the doll that Ed routinely said a prayer over the doll every single night. Alright, number 1, the Amityville horror case. The setting: Amityville, Long Island in 1975. A place rife with satanic manifestations set on driving whoever entered to violent madness. As soon as I even say Amityville, you know where this is going. One of the most famous Warren cases, this haunting continues to land on the conclusion that there are just some things that can't be explained. A year before the Lutzes moved into the suburban home in Long Island, Ronald DeFay Jr. shot and killed the 6 members of his family. So it's no wonder that during the first month of living there, the Lutzes experienced swarms of flies, loud banging noises, disturbing entities, and even levitations. The Lutzes moved out and left all their belongings behind, and George Lutz, the father, an ex-Marine and karate expert, so clearly a tough guy, wouldn't even meet the Warrens at the house. He met them at a Pizza Hut. He was that scared. The Warrens said that this case affected their personal relationship to each other the most out of any case they've worked on. This entity followed the Warrens home the very first day, and Lorraine described being incredibly fearful. There was something she just couldn't explain. To this day, Lorraine says that this is the case that haunts her the most, and said, and I quote, she hoped that this was as close to hell as she would ever get. Ed and Lorraine.
Starting off this countdown, we have Maurice. Now, if you've seen The Nun, then you already know a bit about Maurice, or Frenchie. This guy was a hard-working farmer that ended up getting diabolically possessed. This occurred in 1985. Sometimes blood would randomly just pour out from his body from like his nose, eyes, and mouth. And he didn't know what was causing it. And then he developed super strength and also could randomly understand and speak Latin. At first, he went to a police officer for help, and then a priest, and then finally Ed and Lorraine Warren agreed to help him. Now, he apparently went through a number of exorcisms. According to the Warrens, during the exorcisms, Frenchie's head would split open, boils would appear on his skin, and crosses appeared all over his body. In fact, they have it all on film. Take a look.
Let's step to the front. Feet up in the shoulder? Yeah. Move, yeah, you're in the way, right? Yeah. Okay.
It literally looks like somebody took something sharp and carved it into him, and then it scarred up. But those would appear all over his body. Like the Warren said, Frenchie would often get random cuts on his forehead and scalp. They would split open and bleed during the exorcisms.
How did you enter, Marty?
That is absolutely horrifying. The demon inside of Frenchie put up a huge fight against the Warrens. It certainly made their job more difficult, but also horrifying. In our 9th spot today, we have the childhood demons. Ed Warren's first encounter with the paranormal happened when he was only 5. He claimed that he would see an apparition of a woman. It started off as a dot of light that then transformed into a semi-transparent woman, and then she vanished right in front of his eyes. That encounter at 5 years old must have been absolutely terrifying. After that, Ed would often see his dead relatives that he's never even met before. In fact, one of his deceased aunts told him that when he grows up, he would help many priests, but never become a priest himself. Which was very true. It was like a little prediction of his future. Although his relatives obviously weren't out to get him, Ed still encountered a number of scary entities and demons when he was only just a kid. Which obviously he feared for, you know, obvious reasons. That's terrifying. In our 8th spot today, we have the Military Academy demons. Back in the 1970s, the Warrens were sent to a military academy in West Point, New York to investigate some paranormal activity. Cadets would complain about feeling watched by an unseen force while they were sleeping. Others saw ghostly apparitions in the middle of the night. One of the scariest encounters was in October of 1972. It was 2 in the morning when a ghost soldier manifested right in front of 2 cadets. Apparently, this demon soldier had menacing eyes that glowed. When the cadets looked into his eyes, they both fell unconscious. When Ed and Lorraine Warren investigated West Point, they found that it was haunted by a number of spirits. One was an Irish cook named Molly. She would just be a little nuisance, but she wasn't evil. Same with another ghost whose name was Greer. He was a soldier turned murderer. He would haunt this place because of his guilt. Now, the evil ghost or demon was given the name the Pusher. He could literally cause someone's entire body to freeze or make them pass out, like I said before. I believe now that that demon is gone, but some of the more harmless ones still haunt that area. In our 7th spot, we have the Donovans. In the 70s, the Donovan family was being haunted by some malevolent demon. It started off with them just hearing loud noises coming from inside their walls, like banging. Eventually, things would happen, like blood would pour out from their taps, and they would hear animalistic growls coming from within their house. The Warrens witnessed this all. Turns out that the daughter, Patty Donovan, used an Ouija board and was communicating with a spirit that claimed it was a young boy. But in fact, it was a demon in disguise as a young boy. After learning about this, the Warrens called for a priest and they exorcised the house from evil. In our 6th spot today, we have the Antonellis. It all started back in February of 1966 when the Antonelli family started experiencing some paranormal visitors. Miss Antonelli was the first to see it. She was about to doze off when she got a feeling that someone was in the room with her. She opened her eyes and saw a mass of gray mist with 4 distinct appendages. She turned on the lights and the figure disappeared. For years, this figure tormented her and only her. Then, it started tormenting her husband. One time, a hammer flew down the stairs right towards him. Thankfully, it didn't strike him. But that's when the Warrens were called in. They conducted a seance and found some pretty dark stuff went down in that house. Like, a girl became impregnated by the neighbor, her baby was then and buried in the cellar, etc., etc. The house was just incredibly evil and infested with entities and demons. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the South End werewolf. Probably one of the more bizarre cases ever investigated by the Warrens. Basically, a man named William Ramsey claimed to be possessed by a demon that manifested itself in the form of a werewolf. So then Ramsey started to do werewolf-type things. He said his first werewolf transformation happened when he was about 9. He was playing outside when all of a sudden he got a whiff of something awful, and then his whole body turned ice cold. He then went into a fit of rage. He even managed to rip a complete fence out of the ground, like post and everything. I mean, having that much power as a 9-year-old makes no sense. But it was the demon inside of him controlling him. Things like this continued to happen as he aged. One second he'd be normal, the next he'd be controlled by that demon and go into that fit of rage. During these fits, he always displayed inhuman strength. In fact, he would also growl like a werewolf and snarl like one too. In 1989, the Warrens were assigned to this case and helped conduct an exorcise on him. I don't even know if they got the demons out of him, to be honest. In our 4th spot today, we have the Buddhist exorcism. What you just saw is real footage of the Warrens conducting an exorcism in Japan. So in the early 2000s, the Warrens took a trip to Japan to check out these haunted tunnels that a number of people have died in and were supposedly haunted. But while they were there, they were contacted to perform a Buddhist exorcism on a woman named Teresa. In this clip I'm about to show you, Loraine is trying to reach out to Teresa and get her to fight back against the demon possessing her.
You hear me? Teresa, you hear me? You understand me? Leave, dear, leave. I'm here to help you.
The footage is very creepy. Not only is it actual footage of someone that is possessed, but you can also hear the demon in her voice reaching out to talk to Loraine. Now this case is more on the low-key side. Like, I tried to Google more about it, but there isn't much out there. We actually don't know if they successfully exorcised the demon out of her. Now here's the thing. After this trip to Japan, Ed got really sick and his health started to decline. It's thought that maybe the demon that was haunting this girl had something to do with this. Maybe it latched onto Ed as well. Coming in at number 3, we have the vampire. So I just finished talking about the werewolf man, and now may I present to you the vampire girl. Sounds like Twilight. Whose team were you on? Team Edward or Team Jacob? Let me know in the comments below. I'm sorry, I was always on Team Jacob, okay? Anyways, the Warrens had to deal with one case where an 18-year-old girl was possessed by a demon with vampire tendencies. It started when the girl gained interest in the occult and death. She then began practicing satanic rituals, and what do you know? She got possessed. Soon she found herself waiting in cemeteries or dark places trying to lure men in, and then when they got tricked by her, she would bite them and taste their blood like a vampire. Turns out she did this to around 16 people. She was a literal vampire because of this demon in her. Moving on to number 2, we have Beelzebub. You heard me correctly. Lorraine Warren and her son-in-law Tony Spira were called onto a case in which a man was possessed by Beelzebub. In Christian texts, the name Beelzebub is often associated with the devil himself. They would alternate between using this name and Satan. He is considered one of the 7 princes of hell, and he is associated with the sin of gluttony. In other texts, he is described as the lieutenant of hell, second in power only to Satan, which is terrifying. Again, they have video evidence of this possession. Take a look.
Okay. You hear me? Jesus Christ has all the power. You have none. What is your name? Jesus Christ commanded you to answer that question.
What is your name?
What is your name?
Dude, I'm sorry. If I was there, I would have peed my pants. That is horrifying. But that's not all. There were at least 4 other demons inside of this man possessing him. They then asked the demons why they were possessing Roberto, and he replied with power. Like literally, it's terrifying. That's how he said it. That was a really good impression.
Why are you in Roberto? Why are you there with Roberto? Jesus Christ doesn't like demonic spirits within a human spirit.
I don't know about you, but that creeps me out, okay? It's terrifying. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the deal with the devil. For this next case, the Warrens had to deal with the devil himself. It all started when a 19-year-old girl named Leslie from New York made a deal with the devil. Turns out she had a really big crush on a boy and wanted some help winning his heart over. So what does she do? She doesn't go to a love guru, no! She decides to call on the devil and make a deal with him. She offered him her soul if the devil gave her the boy she had a crush on. The deal worked. She got the boy, but the devil got her. So the Warrens literally had to step in and save her from the frickin' devil. Like, that's some scary bad there, I'm sorry.
Starting off this countdown, we have the toy monkey. You may recognize this little demon monkey from the Conjuring universe. It made a little cameo in the movie Annabelle Comes Home. Anyways, apparently this monkey is possessed by a demon that enjoys stalking its victims before murdering them. That is absolutely horrifying. Why isn't this more well known? Now, there is good news to this. Apparently, it's no longer haunted. It was blessed by them and now stored safely in their museum. But before it was blessed, they told no one about this demon monkey. Coming in at number 9, we have the other dolls. And if you guys are liking this video so far, smash that like button and subscribe to our channel. So the Warrens have a number of creepy ass dolls that are possessed by demons, not just Annabelle. Let's take a look at some of these terrifying dolls. First up, we got this lovely doll with no mouth. Not gonna lie, it looks like a kid's paper mache craft. But that hair looks a little too real, let's hope it's not. Then we have this doll. I didn't think we could get any worse, but whew, I was wrong. Okay, her eyes are horrifying. They literally just stole my soul. And last but not least, we got this gem. Because who doesn't love clowns, am I right? All of these dolls are apparently haunted by different demons. But that's all we know about them. The rest is a mystery. Moving on to number 8, we have the succubus demon. Succubus is a demon that is said to take the form of an attractive female in order to trick and seduce men. It's common for men to be visited by this demon in their dreams. While investigating the Smurl family haunting, Ed came in contact with a succubus demon. Both Ed and Loraine tried to remove this demon from the Smurl family's home, but actually failed to do so. That's when they had to call in Pope Benedict XVI for help.
and they performed a ritual exorcism of the house. Maybe that's why we didn't know about this, because the Warrens failed at removing the demon and needed help. That must have been pretty embarrassing. In our 7th spot, we have the haunted house. The Borley Rectory is said to be one of the most haunted places in England. It was built in 1862 but sadly was damaged by a fire in 1939, and by 1944 the whole thing was demolished. Now here's the thing. Before it was demolished, it was said to be extremely haunted. People would hear footsteps and see ghostly apparitions of a nun and a phantom coach. In fact, when Ed and Lorraine Warren visited the church, this is when she encountered the real-life demon that inspired Valak. While there, she also saw a headless demon monk walking around that left cryptic messages on the walls. And also, they saw ghostly nuns walking around at night. That's when the Warrens hired a bunch of photographers to help capture evidence of these demons. They ended up encountering the ghost of a nun, or demon nun. She was a real-life woman that got buried alive in the brick walls after having an affair with a monk. So there were multiple ghosts and demons at this church that the Warrens encountered, which were not publicized by them. Fun fact though, the Warrens kept a brick from this demolished church in their museum, cause why not, you know, memories, a little souvenir. In our 6th spot today we have the Pearls of Death demon. This simple pearl necklace is said to be one of the most dangerous items in the Warrens museum. And honestly, it's the most beautiful. Doesn't it make you just want to pick it up and put it on? Well, don't, ever. This necklace is incredibly cursed and is said to strangle anyone who wears it. Basically, it all started when a woman was given this necklace. She put it on and claims that it felt like someone was strangling her to death. People around her had to actually yank the necklace off of her to save her. It was a near-death experience. It's believed that this necklace was used in incantations or rituals, or even was used as a holy relic to Satan worshippers. So now it's possessed by some sort of demon that wants to kill anyone who wears it. The Warrens again chose not to go that public with this necklace, because it might tempt people to visit the museum and put it on for themselves. And obviously they don't want people dying at their hands. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Union Cemetery Ghost. Now this one is a bit different than the other ghosts and demons on today's list, and that's because the Warrens kept this ghost a secret because it was fake. There wasn't actually a ghost. Let me explain. So according to a legend, there's a lady in white that haunts Union Cemetery in Easton, Connecticut. She was apparently the victim of betrayal by her lover, and she died either by taking her own life when she was heartbroken, or she was actually killed by her lover. Well, Ed was determined to capture her on tape, and enlisted his secret, not so secret lover, Penny, for help. So in the summer of 1990, Ed apparently camped out in the cemetery for a week trying to make contact with this ghost, and it was a fail. The two then faked a video of the lady in white, which was just Penny wearing white. Anyways, he went on to make great claims that he made contact with this ghost, but hardly any evidence was provided, just a few shadow ghosts on video, which was Penny. People were questioning the authenticity of this video, and he kinda was like, hey, let's just, you know, forget about this, and then they just never talked about it again. Coming in at number 4, we have the Donovan family. In the 70s, the Donovan family was haunted by a very malevolent demon. It started off how it normally does. The family would hear loud noises coming from inside their walls. Eventually, things would happen like blood would pour out from their taps, and they would hear animalistic growls coming from within their house. The Warrens were sent in to investigate, and turns out that the daughter, Patty Donovan, used an Ouija board and was communicating with the spirit that claimed it was a young boy. Clearly, it was a demon in disguise as a young boy. After learning that, the Warrens called for a priest and they exorcised the house from evil. But how come this case wasn't as well known as the others? Why were they trying to keep it a secret? Seems suspicious. What were they hiding? In our 3rd spot, we have the Antonellis. This is another innocent family that was terrorized by evil. It all started back in February of 1966, when the Antonelli family started experiencing some paranormal visitors. Miss Antonelli was the first to see it. She was about to doze off when she got a feeling that someone was in the room with her. She opened her eyes and saw a massive gray mist with 4 distinct appendages. She turned on the light and the figure disappeared. For years, this figure tormented her and no one believed her. That was until it started tormenting her husband and he was all like, WTF is going on? The house really is haunted. Sorry sweetie, but I believe you now. I don't know if he actually said that, but it probably was something along those lines. Anyways, the Warrens were eventually called in and they conducted a seance. That's when they discovered a number of dark things happened at that house. Some of it was so disturbing that it's believed they wanted to try and keep this case a secret because of the home's gruesome past. Apparently a young girl became pregnant by a neighbor. Her baby was then killed and buried in the cellar. That's just some of the dark things that happened there that the Warrens were willing to share. Moving on at number 2, we have the exorcism gone wrong. In the early 2000s, Ed and Lorraine Warren traveled to Japan to check out these so-called haunted tunnels, where a number of people mysteriously died in. But they got more than they bargained for, because while in Japan, they were called in to do an exorcism on a young girl named Teresa. There was a demon inside of her fighting to take control of her body. In fact, Teresa didn't speak a word of English, but during the exorcism, she spoke fluently. The leaked footage of the exorcism shows Teresa trying to fight back against the demon. But a number of people don't think it went too well. Even if you Google the case, no information comes up. So many fans believe that poor Teresa lost her life to this demon, which is why the Warrens kept this a big secret. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the Shadow Doll. I'm gonna start by saying that Annabelle looks like nothing compared to this doll. Seriously, its appearance alone is horrifying. Way creepier than that Raggedy Ann Annabelle doll. Anyways, according to the Warrens, this doll was used in a number of satanic rituals. In fact, the doll itself is composed of human and animal bones and black magic. Then, one of the rituals went wrong, or went right, because the doll became possessed by a demon, and it's super powerful. Rumor has it that if you take a picture of the doll, then it will latch onto you and visit you in your dreams. The dreams will be so bad that you'll either have a heart attack and die, or never want to sleep ever again. In fact, according to the Warrens, this demon doll has been responsible for a number of deaths. So the doll was first for sale in an antique shop and a couple decided to buy it. I'ma stop myself right there. I don't know what possessed this couple to buy the doll. Probably the demon possessed them and convinced them it was a good idea, because who the hell would look at this thing and be like, huh, that's a great little fun-loving doll, isn't it cute? No! Anyways, the couple began to experience intense and horrifying nightmares. They later found out that they were having identical nightmares, and one night the husband woke up with huge gash marks on his back. They linked this all back to the doll and got rid of it. Now, since this demon is so powerful, the Warrens obviously didn't want to tell people about it, because then the media would go on a frenzy and take photos of it, and then the demon doll would curse all them. So they hid it away in their museum for as long as they could.